Andrew here with Springfield Leather with a short video on how to use a Speedy Stitcher. I'm going to go ahead and get this unboxed and show you how to use it. The Speedy Stitcher is a pretty cool tool. Uses some wax thread, doesn't require a punch, doesn't require you to have a hammer. Comes with a couple different needles, and it comes with a spool of wax thread in the bottom of it here. This wax thread, as you stitch, will pull itself out as you get into the leather. And two needles. You've got a straight needle and you have a curved needle. I'm going to use the straight needle for this one. It has a groove in it. Both of the needles have a groove in it. You want the groove to face upwards towards this little button here. This little button acts as a tensioner. So like on a sewing machine, you just want it to wrap around that button one time, and it gives a little bit of tension to the thread to keep it taut. Take your thread and run it through the eye of the needle. Pull it down into the groove, and then place your cap on. The cap is threaded, so pull your thread out so that it sticks out the top like that, and then screw your cap on, and then pull a little thread out to make sure that it's flowing okay, and then give it a little tighten. As long as the thread is flowing, you know you've got it set up properly. So I'm going to set the curved needle to the side. It does fit on the inside of there. It has a little groove in it, so you can keep this in or out. I'm just going to set this to the side for now. That's a curved needle. I created a line on here for my stitch line, and this is basically used for repairing. You can use it to actually stitch a bag or stitch a wallet or whatever you need, but it's usually for repairing patches on bags, like you're on a campsite or you're out in the woods or something and you need to repair a pair of jeans or a boot or something like that. So first thing you do is you poke your first hole in the leather, and it is very, very sharp on the end. So you just push it through, grab the end of your thread that is opposite of the groove, and pull it through. And you want to go all the way through so it's sticking out like that. Pull your needle out, and however far you want that to stitch away, slightly poke your hole there, try not to stab yourself, and push it through the leather. Pull it halfway out, and it will create a loop on the end of this. You'll take the end of your thread, put it up through the loop, and pull the needle out the other side. That's your first stitch. And then you'll continue this process, and you can make the stitches as close together as you want or as far apart as you want. And you just continue down the piece of leather. You can do a lot of cool designs with this too. You can go around curves. You can go on the inside of a boot. It's meant for doing the inside of bags and things like that too. So it's very, very simple to use. I'm going to do one more stitch here. And then to end your stitch, you'll just trim the end off. I usually pull a little bit out there. Trim the end of your thread off. And you have two options here. You can either have back stitched through there, or like I like to do is I like to pull that piece right back through. So you have a clean end here, tied in a knot. Take the excess, trim it off, and then use a lighter to melt it. And that will give you a nice clean finish on the front. So, and that's how I use a Speedy Stitcher. Another cool thing you can use with this is different colored wax threads. Our Rhino thread from Springfield Leather Company will work with the Speedy Stitcher. You'll pull your spool out of the end of it, pull it all the way through, and I'm going to unwind this and wind some Rhino thread on it and show you how it stitches. Boy, this comes with a lot of thread. All right, I want a little bit of the rhino thread onto the spool. The way you put this back in here is you flip it upside down and just pop it in. There are 2 holes in the end of the spools. Don't put your thread through that. It needs to spin on the outside of the spool to come through. There's a little hole on the outside of the handle. You're going to run your thread piece through that. Just drop your spool in there so that it's free flowing. And remember, this little button up here is our tensioner. So just wrap it around that one time. And for this part, I'm going to put my cap back on the bottom. You're going to want to take your needle off, thread your needle. And the rhino thread works pretty well because it's a smaller flat braid thread. The stuff that comes in the Speedy Stitcher is a little bit bigger. So this one threads a lot easier than that one. Bring that up to the top, make sure it sets into the groove. Put your cap back on, pull the thread through, and screw the cap on, pull it taut, and tighten her up. And there we go. We've got that threaded with the rhino thread. Use a black piece of leather. I've got green rhino thread here. So give a little bit of contrast. Poke it through, pull it halfway back through, and on your very first stitch, make sure you pull that thread all the way through so it's stringing out like that. Come back out, go to your next stitch, halfway out, come up through the bottom, come back out, and pull it tight. And then do your next stitch. And I'll do 3 or 4 of these real quick. And you can pull it as tight or leave it as loose as you want. Just always want to be careful when you're poking this through the leather because that is a sharp needle. You don't want to stick your finger with it. Okay. I'm going to go 2 more stitches and then I'm going to do a back stitch with this. Okay. Last stitch. And on this one, you'll go back through the previous hole that you just stitched. So pull a little bit of thread out, find that hole that you just stitched and go back through it and do the same thing. Pull it out and tighten it. And there's your back stitch right there. And you can do that as many times as you want. I'll do it twice here. Generally, you want at least 2 on the back stitches just to make sure that it's secure. Go. Pull that out. Give it a trim. And I'm going very quick on this so the line isn't perfectly straight, but that's essentially what the Speedy Stitcher does. At this point, you could trim off this, trim off the back, and then melt it, or like I like to do, I like to pull that piece through, and it gives it a nice, clean, stitched look on the top. Give it a trim, and then use your lighter to melt the wax thread. And there you go. And that is how you use the Speedy Stitcher with the rhino thread. Thanks for watching.